We're taking a look back at the biggest political turning points, trends, and controversies as we hit rewind on Rising. We've got the power players, scandals, and outrageous decisions that have defined our conversations.
In the first of its kind House hearing on unidentified anomalous phenomena, whistleblower David Grush blew open a discussion about interdimensional beings, touching on holographic theory. Let's listen.
In terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring?
Only a theoretical framework discussion. Yes.
If any of that went over your head, professor of science at Harvard and author of Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth, Dr. Avi Loeb, is joining us to break this down. Welcome, Dr. Loeb.
Thanks for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about what he's explaining there, the holographic theory, and how that might help us understand the technology that UAPs or UFOs are using?
I don't think that's very relevant. The holographic principle is a concept considered in the context of string theory in a way of unifying quantum mechanics and gravity in the context of extra dimensions, meaning we know of 3 dimensions of space and of time. And string theory argues that in order to unify quantum mechanics and gravity, the 2 pillars of modern physics, they need to consider additional spatial dimensions. And then they have proven mathematically some equivalence between quantum field theory and gravity within those extra dimensions. That's, first of all, not known to be a description of reality. String theory is a purely mathematical concept at the moment. We don't know whether there are extra dimensions. Theoretical physicists talk about it for decades, but we have no clue whatsoever that there is any extra dimension beyond the 3 spatial dimensions we have. So mentioning that in the context of technology is completely inappropriate because we don't know whether even there are extra dimensions and whether it applies to the reality that we all share. It's just a mathematical concept at this point within string theory, which is not proven by any means to be correct. There was no experimental evidence for string theory, and we don't see any prospect for getting experimental evidence in the coming decades. So the way I would think of it is just as a mathematical concept that has no relevance to technology, no relevance to the real world, and I'm just surprised that he even mentioned that.
Yeah, and he did say that it was just a theoretical concept, but I also was kind of confused as to why it was brought up. I mean, based on your research, what is the best explanation of where these UAPs are coming from exactly, if not a different realm or different period of time?
Well, we can, first of all, they're not moving at speeds that cannot be explained by conventional physics. I mean, they might be moving at speeds and accelerations that exceed those attainable by our technology, but you know, they don't move faster than light. They don't move at an acceleration that cannot be explained. And so if there are functional devices near Earth that were constructed by some alien technological manufacturer, you know, they might have propulsion systems that are different than the ones we use. And you know, I wouldn't call for new physics in this context. The people that are talking about new physics often are not very familiar with old physics, the physics we know. So for them, talking about new physics is an easy thing. But if you look at modern physics, you know, over the past few decades, it was really difficult to find new principles, new laws of physics, new phenomena. Every time a nuance is found on what we already know, it gets the Nobel Prize. And so, and actually the recent Nobel Prizes were awarded for things that were known for decades. So it's just non-professional for someone that doesn't know the physics we actually already know to talk about new physics. And moreover, you know, if we don't have good data, in these cases of the Nimitz incident, and of what the pilots are talking about, Ryan Graves was talking about. We don't have the data. We don't have any physical evidence measurements that can allow us to assess what they are reporting about. So talking about new physics is irresponsible under these circumstances. In order to consider new physics, we need exquisite data that we cannot explain with conventional physics. And non-professionals just talk about it in a cavalier way, just, well, maybe it's new physics, but that's not the way science is done. We need exquisite data from instruments, not from eyewitnesses, and we don't have that for these reports.
So, Dr. Loeb, with the existing physics that we have and have proven with many years of science, it seems to me that people are just inventing new physics to try and explain something other than perhaps aliens exist. What do you make of what's coming out in the hearing? Do you find that there's merit in Grush's claims about UFOs and UAPs that have been obtained by the U.S. government, military and intelligence community, and that there are biologics, as Grush said?
Yeah, so just think of yourself as a juror listening to witnesses in the courtroom. And the question is, would you believe him? Would you believe them? Now, they talk about experiences, the pilots. We haven't had access to the actual data, so we cannot assess whether what they're talking about is just their personal impressions and how reliable these are, how unusual the phenomena that they saw were. And with respect to Grush, I would like to see someone who had first-hand experience of the evidence, like saw the materials, saw the actual spacecraft that he's talking about, and talks about it. He is talking about what other people told him. 40 witnesses. I don't care about how many people talked with him. The issue is I want to hear someone who actually saw the materials, or I want to see some footage, or I want to get some information, evidence that as a scientist I can analyze. Without that, it's just hearsay. Now, of course, the important development from this hearing is that he was willing to provide contacts, information to representatives such that they would contact people with first-hand experience. And presumably that could lead to the release of information. But until that information is released, until we see footage, until we actually see a spacecraft or materials that came from there, we cannot assess whether it's real. It could be all fabricated.
Right, and I understand at some point during the hearing, some lawmakers went into a skiff with David Grush to apparently review some video evidence or get the names of these individuals that they could reach out to. Aside from whether or not Grush's claims are believable or need more evidence attached to them, do you think it's a good sign in general that this hearing was had at all? And does this suggest that these lawmakers are taking the issue of UAPs seriously?
Definitely. I think the real meat is in the classified information. Okay, so we are not exposed to that. And perhaps some people who saw it initiated this process. And for us, it doesn't look as convincing as of now, but it would lead to some release of evidence and data. And, as an astronomer, it looks completely reasonable to expect the US government to be the first to notice something unusual because they monitor the sky during their day job for national security purposes. And they would be the first to notice something unusual in our sky, something crashing. Astronomers focus their telescopes on very distant sources of light. They ignore anything very close to Earth. And so, it's quite possible the US government has possession or information about the alien technologies. As a scientist, the sky is not classified, the oceans are not classified, so I'm seeking personally evidence for what lies in interstellar space. We just came back a month ago from an expedition to the Pacific Ocean to retrieve materials from the first recognized interstellar meteor. That's an object bigger than 0.5 meter that collided with Earth, had an unusual material strength, and was moving faster than 95% of the stars in the vicinity of the sun. And we want to check whether it's technological in origin. We are currently analyzing the materials at Harvard University and trying to figure it out.
Thank you, Dr. Avi Loeb, for breaking this down with us. I think this is on a lot of people's minds right now, given the congressional hearing. Looking forward to follow up.
Thank you.
Congress actually going to release what they might know about UFOs? that chance. Congress is, however, expected to vote on a UFO-related amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, supported by Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and also Republican Senator Mike Rounds. This would establish a review board that would collect, examine, and release UFO-related records. Now, the 9-member board would be appointed by President Joe Biden, and the only person who would be allowed to share the findings with the public is President Joe Biden.
In a statement from July, Schumer and Rounds wrote, "The federal government shall have eminent domain over any and all recovered technologies of unknown origin and biological evidence of non-human intelligence that may be controlled by private persons or entities in the interest of the public good." Congressman Tim Burchett did not express confidence in the amendment when asked about the proposal during a recent Hill UFO and national security event.
Do you think that that amendment will be enough to sort of help in your efforts of creating this more increased transparency and decreasing the stigma?
I think what you'll do is put it all under one central location, and they'll decide that it is not, that it is a national security issue, and somebody will whisper in their ear and shut that down. I think what they need to do is just release the files, the unredacted files.
So you're not confident that this amendment will make it in the compromise?
No, you're asking. You're going to tell, and the Pentagon is helping with this, a group that's helped. I thought, the Pentagon says they don't exist. So what's there to review? I don't trust them. I don't trust them from day one. They're war pimps. That's all, and their business is very good right now. And that's what they're after. They're after more dollars, more of your tax dollars, and they don't need any more. They just need to release these files.
This shows how weak and pathetic Congress is, that they are proposing to create a board to look at UFO stuff that will be appointed by the president, and any information shared on the president's authority. They don't even have the spine to give themselves this power. How weak and pathetic is this?
It's very bad. I mean, now, it's not just obviously Joe Biden. Ostensibly, if they made this board, then
the office of the presidency, fine.
If a new president were elected, then they would have access to all this information without it having to be collected, and could make a game day decision as to whether or not the rest of us should know about it. It does feel like, again, the specter of national security concerns is being used to justify how all of these amendments and policies are being designed. There seems to be an acknowledgement or a mutually shared feeling that simply saying we're going to disclose this stuff as it comes out is not a viable plan. Ostensibly, the only reason I can imagine is because there's some claimed national security interest. But that national security interest, as we discussed before, is a limitless barrier to disclosures to the public.
I just feel so gaslit on this topic. The claims are not being backed up with anything resembling substantiation. It's more of the, I know somebody who knows something, but I can't tell you who that is, and they're not going to come forward because they fear unspecific retaliation, even though this person would be paraded around media. Would have no shortage of economic opportunities if that's the fear. If it's fear of, again, actual death, killing, as has been alleged. Again, why doesn't some rival government want some amnesty or sanctuary or something? Why aren't there contrary geopolitical goals? It's just it's a big claim that's just not being backed up at all. And then all these, and on that side, and then on the other side, all these puny efforts at disclosure and transparency that I support. I fully support disclosure and transparency. If there's nothing there, if there's something to it, I don't care. I want the American people, they deserve access to whatever is being hidden, whatever inventory is out there. I want it, but we are making no ground at all to disclosing this stuff.
I was in Cleveland over the weekend, and there was a big air show that happened to coincide with my visit, and we watched some of it, and there were some very impressive, from a technological perspective, planes, including, I was watching this one jet that can raise and lower like a helicopter via jet propulsion coming out the bottom of the plane. Never seen anything like it. And I was reflecting on technology and what we understand about what our government's technological capacities are. The fact that this plane is 40 years old or something. All the planes that we're watching are quite old, despite being very impressive and despite still being very much in service. And reflecting on the likelihood, the comparative likelihood that what people have observed, these UAPs, are in fact new technology with objects that can move in new ways that are not known to the public versus whether or not they are alien craft. Because I do think that the government's interest in protecting its own technological advancement from being known more broadly by the public, by our adversaries, is much higher than their interest in not disclosing that some little green men landed on the planet at some point.
Yeah, I don't know. It's getting annoying not hearing more about it.
I know that there's so much interest and appetite in it from the public, but I really do think that at a certain point people have to start to reckon with the reality of the situation. I mean, I'm very persuaded by researchers like Dr. Loeb, who we talked to a couple times now, that is studying the science, elements, material science, real things dredged up from the ocean floor.
You can wrap your head around it.
Well, it's not just that. I can wrap my hands around it. These are, they're like very small particles, but they're material realities in our world that we can study, and it's evidence-based science. When he's talking about why he thinks it's something that came from out of the solar system, he has mathematical models to demonstrate why he believes that. He's looking at the composition of the metal and the alloys to say this is not a naturally occurring substance on Earth. And the science can be wrong and people can poke holes in it, but at the end of the day, we're starting from something being there, as opposed to these other kinds of claims. And you were saying earlier, people might be feeling like there is a threat to their lives if they come out and speak. I don't want to minimize that, but it is also true, knowing that there's this public clamoring for this information to come out. If there are people who do have this information and they're anonymous, then they are incredibly vulnerable because the government certainly knows who knows what.
Yes.
Right? The government knows that already, but we don't know. So if something were to happen to them, there is no accountability whatsoever on a public stage.
The idea that anonymity is safer for you is something I've often encountered in sources for stories, and that can be true if we're dealing with state secrets. Certainly, it can be the case, but people, I think, have sometimes just not thought this through. If you think an agency of the government, the police, school, something that is mistreating you, we want this out in the open because people are going to agree and they're going to take your side and they're going to want to help you and protect you. I'm talking about much lower stakes for national, still very big stakes for the people involved, but a lot of police disputes. It's like you want the sheriff, if it is the smaller and pettier the official, you want this out there. It limits their ability to hurt you if it's out there.
No, you can lose your job if that's the issue.
That can happen for sure.
But again, so.
But that just doesn't seem like a reasonable because in this case, you'll have the greatest job ever if you're the one to bring forward the alien
and my
evidence.
sympathies are much different for someone who's just worried about losing their job. It's like you can't have it both ways. These are heroes that know this information and they're being thwarted by the government. Okay. Well, if it's just that they're worried about losing their job, well, then they're making a choice. They're making a choice to be as complicit as the government and keeping this information hidden from the public because they're not willing to.
Yeah. And we do need more protections for whistleblowers. I'm all about that, but.
Yeah, if it's that important, it's that important. If it's not and your job is more important, then why are you asking all of us to care more than you care? Right?
For sure.
Well, the United States Department of Defense All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has released a UFO hotspot map showing UFO sightings throughout the world. The map shows spots in Nagasaki and Hiroshima and Japan, the east and west coast of the United States, as well as areas of the Middle East. According to YouTuber Mike excuse me if I butchered your name. It shows the data ERA was able to collect from alleged cases from 1996 to 2023. Robbie, this goes against some of your critique.
It's all the desert. It's all New Mexico.
Why do aliens only land in Nevada or Ohio?
Although it didn't look like they're not landing in South America or Africa, probably because there's just less development and interest in this subject, probably.
Yeah, maybe. All right, we'll continue to bring whatever news exists on this topic that comes out. Hopefully some new news soon.
Yes, and tomorrow on Rising, Jessica Burbank will be filling in for Brianna. We'll miss you.
All right, be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the go, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Coordinator for Strategic Communications at the National Security Council in the White House, John Kirby, not denying explosive claims from UFO whistleblower David Grush. Let's watch.
David Grush, who sat on a U.S. Air Force panel on UAPs, he says that he was informed of a UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program based on interviewing 40 witnesses over 4 years. Does such a program exist, and do you believe that the American people deserve to know if it does?
I have no information on that to provide for you today, one way or the other. I would just say what I said last week when I got asked about this. We obviously take the issue of unidentified aerial phenomenon seriously. There's a whole office at the Pentagon that is stood up to analyze the data, collect reports, collate those reports, and forward them up appropriately. And that's, I think, testament to the fact that we know that in some cases these phenomena have impacted military training, have then impacted military readiness.
Kirby also weighed in on President Joe Biden's view of Grush's allegations.
If the president didn't believe that the sightings by pilots were serious enough to be considered, he wouldn't have wanted the Pentagon to stand up an office to look at this, to analyze the data, to collect reports, to provide a system by which we can collate the information and better figure out what we've got here. But that work's ongoing. So if your question is, do we think we need to be transparent with the American people? Of course we need to be as transparent as we can be. But the truth is, Jeremy, we don't have hard and fast answers on these things.
So people who are, believers in the UAP community online were celebrating this moment as sort of evidence of the credibility of Grush, that a senior communications official would not take this opportunity to really offer much in the way of skepticism or pushback, but to say that this is something that, pilots have observed. There's some phenomenon happening. We have to find out what it is, was considered to be, I think, a real boon for the community, especially after last week and some of the reporting that tended to undermine, or perhaps was intended to undermine, credibility in Grush because of the FOIA request that came out about him having had some past issues with alcohol abuse and the like.
Right, and I've not seen that story. I don't know that it's changed much of the certainly not the interest from the the community of people who are who pay a lot of attention to this issue. It doesn't sound like they're letting up just because of the development that Ken Klippenstein reported on. I think it was good of John Kirby not to take that opportunity to just dismiss all sorts of claims to this on this level, because whatever you think about Grush and whether you think what was revealed is relevant, it's still the case that we deserve, the American people, I believe, are entitled to more transparency around this issue, around the claims that not just David Grush, but a lot of other people. There were other people who testified at that hearing. There were other people who were supposed to testify, and apparently, it's been reported, felt worried about doing so. So how can we hear from all of them? It's not going to be the case that every single one of them has some sordid thing in their past that means you can no longer believe them. I doubt that. I don't accept that.
Sure. Here's the problem. I don't care about the Grush stuff. What I care about is that we have testimony that there's aliens in their craft in a room somewhere, that someone has seen bodies in a craft. And the questions that I want to see Kirby and others in the administration responding to is, have you connected with those witnesses who have identified where they saw those things, where they saw the aliens, where they saw the craft? Have you gone back to those locations and confirmed the existence of the aliens in the craft? Tell me what scientific tests have been done on the body to confirm that it is extraterrestrial in origin and not a creature or a kind of Victorian era style funhouse sewn together monkey and fish to make a fake mermaid kind of a deal, and provide some actual evidence.
Did they used to do that to the poor monkeys?
They did. They definitely were mermen created of composites of animals in a way that I'm sure PETA would not approve of. But again, I'm in this holding pattern where it's very frustrating. It's almost more frustrating to me to have this acknowledgement by the administration than it would if they were obviously trying to suppress it. And I don't want to read too far into this one way or the other. But just a week ago, we were having all these conversations about how the intelligence agencies didn't really want this to come out, and that's why they leaked these documents to Ken Klippenstein, which of course did not end up to being the case. That's not how he got all of that information. It was just through a FOIA request of publicly available documents.
But he did. But he did solicit defense officials he knew for their thoughts on Grush. So
yes.
it was.
But the narrative was they're leaking this information to destroy Grush. The government doesn't want you to know about Grush. But what the evidence that we see seems to be that there seems to be a healthy appetite for the government to talk about this and to have us talking about it, short of actually showing us anything.
You think it's a distraction? Yeah.
Because at this point, if everyone's happy for us to learn more about it, it's like if I say, I mean, at a certain point, okay, Robbie, I have got aliens back at my apartment. And I'm willing to have a bunch of high-profile hearings discussing the aliens at my apartment. But under no circumstances, I'm going to invite you over to see the aliens in my apartment. Like, you are the government.
Yeah.
You are the one that has possession of these things. So either give us a story about how, it was destroyed by an earlier era of government that didn't want you to know the secrets. We would have told you the secrets, but they destroyed it, and I'm sorry, there's no more evidence. Or stop with a charade. But we're getting very close to put up or shut up territory.
I think we're well past that territory. I'm so sick of being told, we'd like to tell you what this is or where it is, but we need to do it in a secure room. And we can't tell you. We can just tell, we can't tell you, the people. We can just tell you, the congressman, in secret. And then we can't tell you who told us that. And we can't tell you who's stopping us from telling you.
Right. That's an important point. And these witnesses who, there were witnesses who were supposed to testify at the last hearing who didn't. What specifically are they afraid of? Have they faced any real threats? What do they think is going to befall them that is not likely to befall someone like Grush, who has put his neck out there, and the other witnesses who were able to testify and come forward? When you're doing journalism and you're making the decision to let people talk anonymously, at very least, often there's a lot of contextualization for why it is that they don't want to go on the record, or they still work for said senator and they don't want to get fired.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine now. I mean, look, I'm not alleging that Ken or the Intercept report did anything wrong or inappropriate. I can now imagine, and maybe this was always evident, not wanting to come forward and risk scrutiny of your personal life or something. But I mean, that's just what everybody
All right,
faces.
well, that's it. How much is it? Is it really a deep, dark secret that matters? And that, you're a hero. Exactly. I mean, look at what happened to Julian Assange. Julian Assange has to go through this whole Me Too trial. He's spent years in prison, in constrictive circumstances and in prisons. For something that he believed in. And I'm not saying everyone has to have that level of courage, but I don't think you can simultaneously say these are amazing heroes and we got to offer them protection and at the same time that they stay completely anonymous. And also, they were scheduled to testify and then last minute decided not to, which suggests to me that, were you really going to do it? So you were on the fence. So what can we do to get you over the fence?
It'd be really great if we could get more information on why exactly that happened. I'd like to know.
Yes, even if you're not coming forward, what was motivating that? Just give us some more context. Who should you be afraid of?
Name names.
Because sometimes sunlight is the best disinfectant, and you can protect yourself by naming the person who would otherwise cause you harm and make it more difficult for them to seek revenge on you in those ways.
Well, The Hill is hosting a special UFO UAP event later today, so please tune in to The Hill's The Truth Is Out There UFOs and National Security event today at 2 p.m. You can watch it here on our YouTube page, also at thehill.com. You can see it on Twitter and Facebook. And that actually does it for us for the week. Tomorrow, you can catch Jessica Burbank and Amber Athey for Rising Fridays, and we will be back with you next week.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. And for those of you who prefer to listen while you're on the move, we are now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
We've been informed we have some homemade ziti waiting for us in the lunchroom, so I'm excited for that. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Someone would see a light. They would pay attention to the light. And then the object responds, it performs for you. And then they come down and they investigate you. So it's almost like they're curious.
The craft itself was this black metallic flake paint, but on top of the craft was this gold, lava, plasma, some type of fluid going over and around the craft.
Are we alone? Is there other life out there? Is that mysterious orb in the sky really a UFO? Those questions were top of mind on Capitol Hill yesterday as military veterans and whistleblowers appeared before a House Oversight Committee panel to testify about unidentified anomalous phenomena, informally known as UFOs or UAPs. They showcased a now never-before-seen video of an alleged UAP off the coast of Yemen. Missouri Republican Representative Eric Burleson says the unidentified orb escaped an attempt to take it down, and he says a U.S. military Hellfire missile bounced off the object instead of destroying it.
And lawmakers were demanding answers on the strange objects in the sky. Florida Democratic Representative Jared Moskowitz had some fighting words for the U.S. government. Let's take a look.
I don't really know what is true. I don't know on this subject. But I do know when we're being lied to. And we are definitely being lied to. There's just no doubt about that.
I can't ignore this. I don't care about UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them. I watched a video of a Hellfire missile. For people who are at home, a Hellfire missile can take down tanks. And I watched it, people under oath explaining that it hit a flying aircraft and just did not do anything to it, and the aircraft kept on going. So you're gonna have to explain that either this is a military exercise and they're gonna have to come forward and explain that, or you're gonna have to tell me what I was looking at, because that's ridiculous. I actually thought I did not believe in aliens, but I don't wanna see anything else like this again. X-Files scared the crap out of me. This is not my wheelhouse. I actually am so upset that I had to watch that video, because I really, explain that, Robbie. You always think that everything's so fake. That's a Hellfire missile. For you to understand, that's the most extreme precision weapon, or one of them, that our military uses. It should not fail. So why did that fail?
I guess it was a defective one.
No. Come on.
What is the other explanation?
No, tell me that there's something going on. Like, these are people are under oath. So you're just telling me that everyone's lying under oath. Also, Dylan Borland, who's an Air Force vet, who was one of the people that you saw speaking, he said that he faced retaliation after whistleblowing and saying that he did see some of these objects that are not making sense. So, like, you always say
they've invaded the highest levels of our government, Lindsay, to keep him quiet.
Why? Anna Paulina Luna was on Joe Rogan the other day, and you said, oh, she's just saying random claims. What proof does she have? Now you're seeing conversations happen. People are explaining what proof they have, what they saw, whistleblowing. You still, what do you want to see? You're seeing,
I'm seeing
you're looking at something.
Like a thing on a screen? I don't.
So what would be somebody's intention for sharing this footage that's from the Department of Defense?
Explain. It might very well be military technology, ours or another nation's.
You don't think it's odd that when Trump first got into office, or when he was campaigning, he was going to uncover all this? He was going to explain if we're the only life out here and break this down.
And then he was going to do that?
Well, he was going to break all the bureaucracy up, right? That would be not the government lying to us.
Now Trump is.
No, I'm not blaming him. Listen, follow me here.
Okay.
So him and his team were going to break down all the lies the government was telling us, right?
Yeah.
And then on like day one, we get in the office, we see all these weird drones over New Jersey, and Caroline Leavitt gets on, the White House press briefing and goes, oh, it's just a military exercise, some other stuff too.
Well, that is what it was.
I know, but these things just can't be explained away. Like, we're not dumb. You always tell me, don't think people are dumb. Mm-hmm. People don't just want to be considered like dumb, broad structure.
Well, I don't think people are dumb, but you have to assume the most rational explanation for things. I don't believe we are being visited by aliens or we have alien crafts monitoring us. I suspect there are military technologies that are ours or our other countries, and that's what's being interacted with. You're right that pilots have seen all sorts of objects for 100 years that they can't explain, that they don't know what they are, they're confused by. But just because you see something in the sky, in the night sky, that doesn't make sense to you, doesn't mean it's aliens. You have to go for the most plausible explanation.
People are just asking for transparency. So just explain it. Why is it, rather than no explanation?
The government just doesn't want to admit what its technology can do.
I know, but if this is from 2004, I think that video was from, like, all right, we can share it, right? I think in 20 years, if you haven't mastered whatever you were testing out there in the sky, probably not going to work out for us, probably not going to be in use. So just tell people what you were doing. Like, I don't understand why it has to be such a big secret. And then you have Congress people that are actually interested in this. Their constituents must tell them that they're interested in it, because otherwise they're wasting time, which also is not alarming for a congressperson. But if they are, just answer the question. part of transparency is just being transparent about all the topics that the people that vote for you are interested in talking about. And aliens are an interesting topic.
Well, it is interesting, and I'm for transparency, but this feels like a little bit of a distraction to me because it's always the same thing. We have these hearings where people describe things they've seen and how they feel lied to, and that there's some evidence somewhere else, but we can't have it, and there's somebody who knows, but I'm not going to tell you who that is. That's how all of these things go, and then nothing ever comes of it. So what I'm just getting sick of constant hearings where people, you know, give their views on this subject without any actual evidence being presented.
Well, we need the government to explain how state-of-the-art military equipment and some of our most competent military people can't seem to shoot a Hellfire missile that has extreme precision,
in favor of
and it doesn't do anything.
Transparency, I mean, it might be I never would make this argument in any other case, but a legitimate national security reason to keep
forever for the history of time
military technology that they don't want to admit that they have. Or this is foreign technology that they don't want to talk about. I don't know.
There's only two people that can help us here. We really need Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones. That's the only way we're going to figure this out. We just need them too.
I was watching a clip from Men in Black the other day. It's a great movie.
Because otherwise, like, we're just going to keep getting lied to. And come on. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, everybody do, but I think Joe Rogan is largely popular for a variety of reasons, but he talks about this topic. There is an extreme interest
people
in
like this story
topic.
Because
there's Netflix documentaries that have broken records on this topic. So why are we acting like it's so irrelevant? You can't just brush this one off. The world is interested.
No polar, partisan direction, because it's just like they are keeping the information from you, and they isn't really Republicans or Democrats. It's just the people in charge, the man. So everyone can get, so like, you know, Moskowitz wants to get in on this because Anna Polina Luna has been having a field day on this, Tim Burchett. You just say, you know, they're keeping the information from you. It's just too vague and non-specific for me. I know probably most people watching disagree and are like, Robbie, why aren't you turning on your skepticism of official narratives for this?
You see it with your own eyes. You see a video. It's not I'm watching video.
As I said in my radar, in this very different context, video can be misleading. Video can be extremely misleading. And I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm not, you know, technically, I don't have enough technical expertise. I don't know what the view outside the plane window looks like. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Well, a UFO, let me tell you. Look at the shape. Look at X-Files. Look at all the shows you watched on UFOs. Why is that thing rotating? How else do you want to break this down? Does a plane go in circles and circles? I mean, it can if you're...
Wouldn't it be odd if the UFO actually looks like exactly
how we drew.
No,
it wouldn't be odd. It means that we had
we discover life on Mars and they look like little green men that would be unlikely to me.
Okay, but the actual unmanned what is it, UAP, whatever.
UAP, they used to call them UFOs, now they mostly call them UAPs, but it's the same thing.
Okay, so those things, maybe somebody has seen it, and that's why the drawings are so accurate in movies like Men in Black and such, and we're seeing flying saucers, and maybe that comes from somebody sharing a little bit of intelligence.
How about no?
A new jobs report showing the economy might be worse than we thought, and now lawmakers are playing the blame game. What the numbers show after the break.